In this slideshow, we review the mill rate and revenue limit history of the Stevens Point Area Public School District. Occasionally, it helps us to better understand how we got to where we are with our mill rate and our revenue limit by reviewing their respective history. Here is a 10-year history of levy amounts and equalized levy rates. Wisconsin school districts determine their levy via the revenue limit formula. Once the levy is determined, it is divided by the TID-out equalized value, or fair market value, of all property in the school district to derive an equalized levy rate. This rate allows citizens to compare tax burden among school districts. The table below shows the fiscal year, the levy amount for each respective fiscal year, as well as the total TID-out equalized value, percent change in equalized value, and the equalized levy rate. So let's look at this district's equalized mill rate, which is also referred to as a tax rate or levy rate. Here are some graphics to show trending of the tax rate from 2001 to 2022. For 20 out of the last 21 years, the Stevens Point Area Public School District mill rate fell below the state average mill rate. The Stevens Point Area Public School District mill rate remains below the state average mill rate and below prominent area school districts. Graphically, the low mill rate of the Stevens Point Area Public School District among the 5 largest school districts in the conference and the state is seen clearly here. Now let's look at this district's revenue limit history from 2008 to 2022. Here are some graphics to show the effect of legislative action on the district's ability to raise funds over that period of time. This is a very busy slide, so I'll take some time to explain it. The table on the left shows the per pupil allowance from the revenue limit, which was increased by the CPI-U versus legislative fiat. So the column on the left shows the years, school years. The second column in shows the per pupil adjustment under prior indexing. This means that the per pupil allowance allowed under the revenue limit was being increased each year by cost of living, and in that column you can see it rising by that rate, rather consistent. In the third column, that's the actual rate that was approved by the legislature beginning with the 2008-2009 school year when they uncoupled the connection between the CPI-U and the increases in the per pupil allocation. They were no longer linked to the cost of living. Instead, it was just a matter of legislative fiat of how much, if anything, that allowance in the revenue limit per pupil allowance would be authorized. The last column in that table shows the difference between what would have been the indexed per pupil allowance versus what actually happened with the legislative fiat. The table on the right shows what the district would have received and the revenue limit authority lost. Again, the first column on that right-hand table shows the school years. The second column shows the membership, the in-seat membership of the students in the school district for each of those respective years. The third column is the indexed revenue limit, that being indexed by the cost of living. And the fourth column rather, shows the non-indexed amount, the legislative fiat, which is a result of having multiplied the membership times the table on the left, either the indexed rate or the legislative rate, to arrive at those numbers. And then the difference between the indexed and non-indexed amounts in the last column. And at the bottom right-hand side, you can see that nearly $21 million has been lost to the district since 2008 as a result of no longer indexing this relationship between the per pupil allowance and the revenue limit itself. The graph shown here gives you a visual idea of that same impact described in the previous slide. The blue line represents the indexing of the per pupil allowance if it were connected with the consumer price index. You can see it's rather stable and does give us a trend of financial certainty. However, under the fiat of the legislature, by putting in whatever allocation, if any, to allow for the per pupil allowance, you can see by the orange line how that has changed. The fiscal uncertainty is there from year to year. It drops, it comes back up, it goes up a little bit, it drops again, etc. So from one year to the next, we don't know if we're going to get anything at all, or if we do get something, we have no idea how much it's going to be until after the legislature acts. It makes planning considerably difficult. The $21 million lost in revenue limit authority is shown here graphically from 2008-9 to 2022. Now let's look at what happened to our revenue limit authority since passage of the 2018 referendum. On this slide shows the change in district revenue limit authority from 2018-19 to 2021-22. The revenue limit authority did increase over this period, but by less than what was normally seen in 1 year. As you can see in the table, in 2018-19, the revenue limit total on line 9 was $72.5 million. By 2021-22 school year, the revenue limit total for line 9 was $74.1 million. Gain from 2018-19 was $1,655,551. So comparing the 2018-19 total of $72.5 million against the 2021-22 total of $74.1 million, you can see that this is the amount that was derived. However, if you subtract the hold harmless non-recurring amount of $790,581 and the transfer service amount of $317,138, or a total of $1.1 million from that, you see that the actual growth in revenue limit over that time period was only $547,821. That's a very small amount for that length of time. Were it not for the approval of the $3.5 million recurring referendum for operating funds in 2018-19, the district would be financially much worse off.